Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. If you've never been here before, my name is Jakub and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. Now, this show is something that I've been running for a number of years now, and what I do, I give you a feedback on your photos to make sure that you can keep moving forward with your photography skills. Now, first of all, how you can join us? Well, it's really simple. To get your photos into the review show, simply head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership, and then join our Clever Photographer Plus membership, where you can first of all get access to this photography review show, then also access to our Clever Photographer Academy Facebook group, and on top of it, probably the biggest bonus is that you will get a monthly digital photography tool bundle, which is full of incredible things like Luminar, Neo, and Lightroom presets, overlays, textures, backgrounds, and so much more. Now, what do we do during the show? We look at your images from 3 different points. First, we look at the technical part. This is where we look at things like your camera settings, your sharpness, exposure, noise, and other interesting stuff. After that, we look at the artistic part. This is where we look at things like composition, storytelling, the main subject, and the visual part of the image. And finally, if we have an extra time, we look at the photo editing, and what we do, we use Luminar Neo as the editor, and basically if I think that there is a benefit for it, I'll show you how I would maybe make few adjustments to give even more impact to your images. Anyway, now this is all out of the way. We have some incredible photos to look at, so let's jump straight into it. Today we have Elizabeth with landscape photos, Tony with his nature captures, and then Zdeněk with his incredible wildlife images. So, starting from the top, we're gonna start with Elizabeth and her landscape captures. So, Elizabeth, we have 3 images right here. They all have a similar feel, this kind of daylight, moody, and a little bit kind of even more moodier capture. So let's start with the first image, make it a little bit bigger. And as I mentioned, the first thing we're gonna do is to talk about the camera settings. So this photo right here with the mountain and the garden in the foreground was captured with a Canon RP. And when it comes to lens, it was the Tamron 28-300 millimeters. Now, from your camera settings, ISO 200, 127 millimeters, f13, 1/500 of a second. So when it comes to the camera settings, I think the ISO is nice and low. We try to keep it as low as possible and as close as to ISO 100 as possible, but I think the 200 is perfectly fine, so well done on that. Nice zoom in with 127 millimeters, then give us a really nice depth of field with the use of the f13. Now the f13, just make sure that we have details pretty much all the way through except the elements that are close to the camera, and the 1/500 of a second give us really nice exposure across the image. So looking at it, this is the camera settings, which I think is perfectly fine. So then we can kind of zoom in and look around to see how we're doing with the noise. So noise-wise, everything looks good. I think there is no problem there. The image looks quite clean. Everything looks nice and sharp, except again the foreground, which I think works very well as an indication of the depth. We have the details all the way through. Nice details in the sky. So for me, everything looks good. Moving to the artistic part of this image, again, I think things work very nicely here. Again, I think some of the benefits here, the texture in the sky really helps to complement the image. I love the colors. I love the depth. Also, the color contrast works really nicely here, where we have the blues and the greens. All of that works really nicely. Now, one thing I would maybe suggest, or for the future, I would just try to see if there is any chance how you could go maybe a little bit, from my point of view, towards the left and use more of the path as a leading line. Now, maybe that was not possible. Maybe there was a structure or something, so that's fine. But it would be really great if the path would be leading us a little bit further into the image. I think that would be really, really nice. Other than that, I think it works really nicely. I really enjoy the image. It's very nice, saturated, and I think it works really, really well. So there is not much I can add to it, Elizabeth. It's a lovely image with lots of beautiful things that works very well together. It's well captured, so well done. Moving to the second image, now a little bit a moodier scene. And again, we're going to start by looking at the technical details. So starting from the top, again, Canon RP with the Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. From the camera settings here, ISO 100, so this one nice and low, 28 millimeters, giving us really nice wide capture with the f13 and 1/100 of a second on the shutter speed. Again, the f13 give us really nice depth of field with sharpness pretty much starting from the front of the image all the way towards the end. So this is all good. The shutter speed looks good. Everything kind of work out really nicely together. I love the colors, the exposure. So this is all good. Now looking closer to the image, let's have a look. Because it's kind of smaller resolution a little bit, some of the details disappear, but I think the sharpness in general worked quite well. Now there is just a slight touch of noise towards the end of the image, so that's just something to keep an eye on and see if you could maybe remove it with a little bit of luminosity on a noise reduction. But other than that, it works quite well. Now, looking at the image and looking at the sky, there is just there is a little bit of glow inside of the tree, which makes me think that maybe the sky was replaced. That's usually a good indication when there is this kind of glow in the middle. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but definitely something to look at. The rest of it looks quite nice, so just keep an eye on this and also on the glow around the edges, around the kind of darker elements. Usually, the sky replacement can be really well seen on the point when there is a lot of contrast, so where you have a brighter part of the sky and darker element like the mountain or tree, that's where the sky replacement is the most visible. But other than that, I like lots of things on this image, which brings us really nicely to the artistic part of the photo. Again, the leading line using the river, pointing us towards the center of the image works really well. The depth, which is created with the trees, works very well. The contrast of the colors and light, I really enjoy on this image where you have the darker greens in really combination of that moody sky and moody river. Again, works really, really well. So lots of really nice stuff, well composed, well framed, and well put together. So another great image, Elizabeth, well done, and well done for putting it all together. That will bring us to the third image, which I like a lot as well. So Elizabeth, looking at the third image, again captured with the Canon RP, Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. Now this time a little higher ISO on 500, still on f13 and 1/80th of a second. So looking at it, a really lovely reflection right here. And the overall light, again, is very, very nice. Details. Let's zoom in a little bit and let's see what we're getting. Definitely towards the middle and end, we're getting lots of texture and details there. So that all works very well. Noise-wise, there is a little bit, obviously, coming from the ISO 500. There will always be a little bit of noise, but that's fine as well. And similarly to the first image, when you kind of zoom towards the areas where there is the contrast, so again, we have a brighter area and darker area, again, you get this kind of artifacts around the tree, which a little bit giving out the idea that there was a sky replacement there. Now, if you don't look at the details, I think it works quite well. So that's all good. It's well put together. If it's original sky, then I'm sorry for that, but it's just something around the sky and these details which just doesn't look completely natural. But other than that, moving to the artistic part, there is so much to like. The reflection looks really good. The frame-in-frame composition is great. I love frame-in-frame composition. I think it really gives a depth and makes the image so much more interesting. Again, then the texture in the sky, the very natural, moody feel of the image works. So there is just so much that works on the image that I wouldn't worry about the little details on the tree or on the sky. I think all of that put together works really nicely. So I really enjoyed the image. I think it's beautiful. Again, I'm a big fan of reflection. So that's a bonus point from me. Big fan of frame in frame. So again, I love the fact that you use the trees to create a frame for the image. That overall moody feel works really well. So in overall, well done, Elizabeth. It's a great photo. Now, thinking about the editing, I actually don't have anything to add. This one, I think it's very well done. On this one, the only part that doesn't really correspond with the image is the center, because this looks almost like it was a sunny day, this specific part. It looks like there is a sun, but above it is a sky which is really dark. So that is a little bit confusing. What I would do, I would try to darken it a little bit, or maybe at least remove the warmth. So if you would remove the warmth from there, you could claim that maybe, or you would think that maybe the light is coming from these openings in the sky. So how could we do this? Well, let's take the image and move it into the editing module, where we can jump into the develop tool, click on the color, and we just looking at this part. Don't worry about the rest of the image. But what we're gonna do, we're just gonna bring the temperature down, which doesn't really work that great. But let's say that we're gonna go first of all to somewhere around -20. So we do that. Now we can use quick masking. We can, for example, use the object selection. So what it's gonna do, it's gonna select the image, it will scan it, and then it will give us a choice to basically just quickly select certain part of the photo. So let's hope it's not gonna take too long, but after that, basically we should just be able to use a simple plus and minus option and just select the different elements. So let's see how long this is gonna take. Okay, so now we have that ready, so we can just hover over different parts. So now when I hover over the mountain, just like that, I can click on it and it will be selected. Now I can select another part, just like this one here, but actually I think that's way too much, so I can always just use Command or Control Z to do one step back, and that's fine. So let's go back to the adjustments and let's have a look. So now the mountain is little less warm and saturated. Next thing we can do, we can bring the exposure down a little bit there as well. So something like this. And after this, one more thing we're going to do is to jump into the masking. And what we're going to do, we're going to actually copy the mask. So the part we already selected. Finally, we're going to go into the color, HSL panel. And in HSL panel, we're going to go into the saturation and actually bring the warmth or yellow down. Now looking at it, it's maybe not yellow and warm, maybe it's orange. So we're going to use the orange slider. That works much better, somewhere around here. And after this, we're going to go into the masking, mask actions, paste, and this way, this will only get applied to the mountain itself. Let's have a look. Yep, that's all good. And I think this is much better. Now looking at it, to finish it off, I would jump into the vignette, where I would take the amount slider, bring it down, and basically add another frame and more interest into the center of the photo. If you want to make it even stronger, what you can always do is to open the advanced settings and basically adjust the inner light and get even more glow there. So subtle change, nothing major, just from before and after, but I think it makes it just a little bit more natural. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for the 3 images. It was great to see them. There are some lovely captures, and I hope that my feedback was helpful. Moving on, looking at the nature shots from Tony. Tony, I missed your photos. Spring is here, almost summertime, so I really think that that's a time of the year where you will shine with your camera and with your beautiful flower captures. So looking at it, we have some roses and other captures. We also have a bee sitting on the top of the flower here. So let's go through them and let's have a look. First of all, with the kind of first impression. One thing that I always love to see with your images is the work with the contrast of the colors. Like this one, orange on the back of just green background. I think that works really well. Here, a little detail. Yeah, there is more happening here, and there is maybe we can look at the image and see what we would adjust to add more attention towards the animal, but lovely capture, lots of lovely sharpness there, and just lovely, lovely level of details. Now, this is another great example of your photos, beautiful colors, beautiful saturation, lovely contrast with the rest of the image. Also, what I really enjoy on your photos is that even though you get really saturated images, the saturation is always natural. So there is lots of pink and red and magenta here, but actually, even though I'm looking at it, it really looks very natural to me. So that works really well. This little flower on the front also is a nice opening to the scene. And again, I think the square crop here works really well. So well done, Tony. That's a great image. Similarly to the first one. Now, I have to say that this one, I think the light for me is a little bit too harsh. Now, sometimes you can do that, or you can use that in your advantage, because I think it can create nice texture and nice depth. But in this case, I think maybe the contrast is just a little bit too strong, and it gets a little bit overwhelming when you're looking at it. You know, you get that kind of complete dark at the back, and you get this really bright highlights in the middle. And when I look at it first, my eye really goes all over the image and trying to see what is it you're trying to show. So it's just something to think about. This is also a really lovely photo. Now, this is a good example of how the human eyes work. When I look at this image, the first where my eyes go is actually the background. It's this area and this area. And that's because human eyes are naturally attracted by contrast. Contrast, when we talk about contrast, we're talking about color contrast. We can talk about contrast between sharpness and also contrast in luminosity or brightness. But when we're talking about brightness, human eyes get naturally attracted by brighter areas of the image, the brighter parts. So basically, by looking at the image, first where the eyes are going are towards the background, which is not necessarily what you want, because obviously your main subject is the flower. So that is also something we can look at in a moment and see if we could help a little bit. But still, lots of lovely texture, great light, lovely colors, really, really nice capture. So that's about it. Now, okay, so we have two of these images to work with. So let's start with this one. Looking at it, Canon 7D, it doesn't really tell us much more. Yes, ISO 250, f5.7 and 1/256 of a second. So in overall, it's lovely. I love the bokeh soft background. I think that works really well. The sharpness is very good. I really enjoy the fact that you have pretty much sharpness all across the flower. It's not just one of these really soft, blurry captures. This really gives us the full view of the main subject, and I think it works really, really well. More what I wanted to talk about this image is, again, the brighter background. So we need to bring more attention towards the front. How can we do this? Let's take the image into the editing panel. Where? First, let's try to use the Relight AI. So we're going to go into the creative section, open the Relight AI, and with that tool, basically what you can do is to relight the objects far from the camera and near to the camera. So near is the flower, so we should add some brightness there. And background far, we should remove it like this. Now, sometimes we need to adjust it. So let's go to somewhere around -50. And after that, we need to adjust the depth. So keep an eye on the main subject, but I think just maybe somewhere around 70 works really well. So now we can add more brightness towards the front, something like this, and have a look at the difference. So before and after, that's already much better. Maybe the brightness is a little bit too strong, so let's do that. And unfortunately, with the Relight AI, what it does, it basically starts the mask from the bottom of the image and it goes up. So this is why we still have brightness in this area. But we will adjust that in a moment, so no problem. This is already much better. After this, let's go into the develop tool, light, and let's keep an eye just on this area here. So we're gonna make it darker. I'm thinking somewhere around here. After that, quick masking, brush, paint, little bit bigger brush, strength on 60, and then kind of very quickly, we're just gonna brush over the area we want to make darker, which is just the bottom part of the image. So we're just gonna brush it in slowly, focusing on this area now, seeing if that corresponds with the top. I think it almost does. So something like this works really well. If we want, we can always go back to the adjustments and adjust it if it's too dark, but I think somewhere around here is good. And finally, we do want to add a little bit more extra attention towards the center. So two ways to do it: quick vignette, amount down to create another vignette, and then inner light to add more attention on center. And even more so, we can then have a look at the Enhance AI and see if that will help. No. So develop tool again, exposure, open the shadows, and masking, brush, strength on 40, bigger brush, and basically just highlights some areas of your flower like this to get more attention there. So, Tony, let's have a look at it before and after, and I think the difference is huge. So now the human is ultimately focusing on the flower itself, not the background, and you're getting the attention the flower desires. Okay, back to the catalog. Since we still have a little bit of time, let's have a look at this capture here and see how we could maybe add more attention on the actual bee here. So obviously I would go for a little bit different crop. Let's see what we could do. Again, more attention. Now, different ways we could do that. We could obviously go for the center crop to make sure that the subject is in the center. Another way to do that, if we would lock this now, is try to basically add the bee on that kind of golden point of our lower third or of our rule of thirds. So when you look at the crop now, we have a 1, 2, and 3 squares from the top to the bottom, and 1, 2, and 3 squares from left to right. So our thirds. Then they are divided with these lines from top to bottom and left to right, and where they intersect, that is called golden point. So these are the points where human eyes like to see their main subjects. So this is why now, by positioning the bee here, it will get more attention compared to being in a center. Now we can hit enter, crop that, and when we will come here, we get more attention there. What are the other things we could do? Definitely make the background a little bit darker. So back to relight and brightness far down. Again, it will take a moment, but I think somewhere around here. Again, we need to adjust the depth a little bit, so that helps as well. In overall, I think the whole image is a little bit too bright, so it's kind of evenly lit. So what we're gonna do, jump into the develop tool, bring the brightness a little bit down. That helps. Then I think we need to bring back a little bit of saturation. Now let's see if we do the vibrance. No. So just saturation. Yep, that will help. And I think a little bit of extra smart contrast will help. Now I think it's maybe a little bit too dark. So let's actually bring back some of the exposure. And I think that is already much better. So like this is what I would do. Of course, that we could adjust it further. Since we were there, maybe add a little bit of extra warmth, just a touch, a little bit of magenta to remove the green tint. And finally, just kind of going into the creative section, I'm thinking about mystical tool. That's always a good idea to make it a little bit more dreamy and to add even more attention towards the main subject, add a vignette, but this time actually choose the subject and select the center of the vignette on our bee. Little bit of extra inner light to add more attention there, and we started here and ended up here with a little bit more attention there. Anyway, Tony, thank you very much for sending your images over. It's great to be able to review them and tell you more about what I think, and I hope to see more of your photos in the future, maybe already next week. And to finish it off, we have 2 captures from Zdeněk. Zdeněk, it's great to see you back one more time. Thank you so much for joining our landscape photography conference. I think it's almost 2 weeks ago. It was a really pleasure to see you there. And it was great to be able to spend the weekend alongside you and other photographers. Now we have 2 great captures, giraffe and lion right here. So, or lioness, I'm assuming. So starting with the giraffe. Lovely, lovely capture. Now, it's a beautiful capture, the full body of the animal. So let's start from the top, looking at the camera details. So this is Canon 77D with the Canon 100 to 400 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 400, 160 millimeters, f6.3 and 1/1000 of a second. So as of camera settings, everything is good for me there. Nice high shutter speed to make sure that you get all the details. f6.3 giving us details all the way through, which is fine. But what I quite like is that the background is a little bit soft. So again, there is a little bit of the depth helping us to add more attention towards the animal. ISO 400 for the wildlife, there's no problem there. And to be honest, looking at it like this, I think the noise is minimal. So all is good there. So all in all, this is a great capture. Camera setting is good. Obviously, it's a brighter image, but everything is good. The light is actually very decent. There are no heavy shadows. There's not massive contrast. So everything works really well here. So technically, well done, Zdeněk. Now, talking about the composition, I think it's great. I love the story and I love the storytelling. I love the framing. The fact that you have extra space in front of the animal is great. That the giraffe is there in the full size. It gives us a little bit of depth that she is hidden behind the bushes. So this is great. It's a really, really lovely picture. And I think the composition works really, really well. What also helps is that the natural color of the giraffe actually create quite nice contrast with the background. So all in all, it's a great shot and it's really well done. Photo processing or photo editing is really good here as well, Zdeněk. I don't really have much to add you. Yes, you could do a little bit of dodge and burning, again, to add more attention towards the animal. Very simple one, just like I was showing on the conference, is, for example, to close the bottom of the image. Now, this can be done with simple develop tool, minus exposure, and maybe a little linear gradient from the bottom up. So maybe something like this. When you bring it down a little bit, by doing that, you will basically make the bottom a little bit darker. And by coming back to Tony, the point is that the human eyes get more attracted by brighter parts. So the darker parts, the darker bottom will be avoided and there will be more focus on the giraffe. Other than that, vignette is always a tool to go to simply because it's really powerful very quickly. So center around the animal, minus around 40 or 50, and a little bit of inner light, just add a little bit of extra touch. Let's have a look before and after. Nothing crazy, not crazy changes or anything, just a really nice touch to be able to maybe add a little bit more attention towards the giraffe. Coming back to the catalog and your second capture, I'm very excited as well. This beautiful, beautiful image. So this was again captured with a Canon 77D with a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. Looking at the camera settings, ISO 640, 400 millimeters, f10 and 1/640th of a second. So yes, higher ISO, obviously going for a faster shutter speed, quite high f-stop, but then you were shooting with 400 millimeters. So all of that is actually very nicely balanced and definitely manageable. With the 400 millimeters, even the f10 giving you really nice depth of field with this kind of softer background. So all of that, I think, is just beautiful. It's a lovely capture, technically very well done. Just lots of really good things about it. Talking about the artistic part, the composition, again, lovely, more kind of detailed shot, focusing on the head, but again, with a lovely space in front of the animal. The depth help us to add more attention to the animal. I think that the extra brightness on the lion or lioness also works really, really well. So yeah, it's a lovely photo. Yeah, it's very well done. The only thing, if I would have to pick something, is that it would be great to have a little bit more contrast with the background. I think the colors kind of blend together, but that's how it is. And yeah, it's well done. Nothing I would change on it. What you could do, you could play around with the image and maybe turn it to black and white and make it like this really fine art capture, like something like crazy like this, bring it really down and have this really heavy vignette just on the face. Obviously, almost like this kind of old captures. So something like this. You would have to play around with it and make it work better, but you could really play around and get some incredible results as well with black and white photography. Maybe add a little bit of dramatic look and so on. But already the way you started is great. So I don't really want to change anything. It's just an additional creative idea on what you could do with the photo. So Zdeněk, thank you very much again. Those are incredible captures. And to be honest, by looking at them, I wouldn't have to change anything and they would already work. So well done. And thank you so much for sending your photos over. And the same goes to Tony and Elizabeth. Folks, thank you so much for sending your photos over. It was great to see them. And for the rest of you, if you want to send your images in the future, don't forget to visit our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership, where you can join us already next week for the next episode of the Photography Review Show. For today, my name is Jakub Bors, and I can't already wait to see you in the next episode.